Hello, welcome to our interview. So we have the playwright and the director for our next rehearsed reading, which is Boom. We wanted to take a little bit of time to talk to our two creatives and just give you a little bit of an insight into what we're getting up to at the moment. Let's kickstart with Jean. Where did the idea for this play come from?
So that was a very long time ago because this play was performed in 2008. I wrote it in 2007. I actually written another play, Plunge, which was about the Asian economic crisis. And that one I wrote 10 years before that. And then 10 years later, I think when I was attending a residency at the Royal Court, I was thinking of updating the play called Plunge. And I realized that things were so different in Singapore then. So, things were really booming. There was a property boom, stock market boom, things like that. And so I was thinking instead of writing, I guess just updating an old play, what interested me was the fact that even though, stock markets kind of were booming at that time, um, and it actually kind of it had a spillover effect. And it actually led to this phenomenon called the en bloc sales,
Yeah.
right? Where these entire condos, the entire estates, would vote on whether or not to sell en bloc, to sell as a group. And if you were in the minority and less than like 20%, then you would be overruled, and the whole, the whole condominium would be sold, even if you disagreed with it. That would be quite traumatic, I imagine, for the minority. And in particular, I read about this old lady who was living in this really old condominium, and she was one of the holdouts. I think she and her son. And the reason why she refused to move was she said that, she was afraid the spirit of her dead husband wouldn't be able to find her again. And I just found that a very powerful image. So I had this image of this
Yeah.
old woman who was sitting there, just like waiting for the bulldozers to come and refusing to budge.
Yeah, I mean, and it's still, I've been in Singapore just 3 years but I've met a few colleagues that have still gone through that process of
Right.
fighting against, unblock, and actually there were some beautiful properties as well near Mountbatten, some really old properties that I think happened there as well, and they all got cleared and they're going to be demolished. And I thought, oh, such a shame to see these old buildings disappearing for new development. So I think very much still a theme that's around, right? Even 10, 20, what were we, 10, 12 years on? 12 years.
Yeah, I think definitely there's still so much relocation, dislocation, and just renewal. I mean, that's one way of looking at it, right?
Yep.
So buildings that aren't even that old kind of get pulled down and redeveloped.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated from a foreigner's perspective as well, because some people will say to me, "Oh, this building's really old," and I go, "Oh, 1980s?" And they're like, "Yeah, really old." Peyton, let's just come to you for a moment because I know maybe just tell us about your relationship to this play because I know that you've worked on it before.
Oh yes. So it was 5 years ago when Singapore turned 50, right? And so I directed Boom actually for Esplanade 50, and alongside Jean's other play, Everything But the Brain, and Verena Tay's The Car. So Esplanade 50 was actually a platform meant to commemorate Singapore's wonderful theatre history and also landmark plays. So that was when I really got to work with Jean. And I think that's when our friendship began and started to blossom, really, right, Jean?
That's right.
Yeah, we started actually went out for brunch,
Yeah.
right? Like we went out to Nassim Hill or something, I think, for brunch. Yeah, so that's when we got to know each other better. And then I'm so happy to say that right now she's become my close friend and collaborator, whom I trust and respect very much.
Brilliant. I love that. Out for brunch is always a good thing as well.
We
So
missed that. We can't do that now.
not yet, but soon we hope soon. So what is it then, Peyton, about this play that you like, you love, that resonates? You're back here again with the script again. What are you looking
Yeah,
forward to about this play?
because Boom is actually my favorite Jin Tae play. I mean, some of our cast members would say, no, our favorite is Everything But the Brain. So like that's a strong contender. But I think Boom really does speak to me in a time when I was growing up, and it's familiar to me because I saw a lot of changes around me. And then I think there was 1 year when I kind of chose not to go to Orchard. Yeah, because I was just like in fatigue, like no more shopping. And then 1 year later, I went back and I was like, whoa, so much has changed. Is this even Orchard? Like, this is not even here. And I was like, oh, Far East Plaza. That was like my secondary school childhood memories, right? It was all housed in like this really cool place with old shops, like old chicken rice stall and all that. But I think all that changed a lot for me. And then I felt like I was a mountain turtle, like a swaku in my own country, and sort of like I felt a sense of displacement even in my own backyard. So it was just a very fast changing society for me. So when I was reading Boom, maybe for the first time, and also when I staged it, I found a lot of comfort in Jean's words. Like there were many anchors, like cultural anchors that she put in the play that made me feel very safe and like, oh, actually, Singapore is still Singapore. You know, this is still home. Things like Singlish, dialects that are very familiar to my ears. Although I can't speak it, but it's like what my grandparents would have spoken to my parents, right? And so, and also the very relatable everyday Singaporean characters like that remind me of my neighbors.
Yeah.
That made me feel that there was a sense of security and comfort in reading that play. So, yeah, so that's why it's very meaningful to me.
Yeah, very close to your heart. Yeah, really nice. I think I'd love to kind of pass a similar question over to you, Jean, because I know that they're all everything you write. I'm sure are your babies. I know, but particularly with Boom, is there a section of the play that you kind of, I suppose, it's not the right term, but like the best, or there's a moment in this play that you always kind of resonate with quite directly.
Yes, I do actually. I have a favorite monologue, and I think that's from this play, um, and it's the moment. It's quite close to the end. I think when the mother is looking out of the window of a new flat. She's been forced to move, and she looks out of the flat, and I think all the frustration and all the angst and all the helplessness kind of pours out in that particular monologue. And I think for me, that is actually the heart of the play. Because this play was always, in some ways, it was always about her and her struggle. Even though in the end, you know, as I wrote many drafts of the play, I realized actually the protagonist was the son. You know, was a son Boon. But for me, that's still the heart wrench, the heartache of the play is in that monologue. And I have been asked to cut it before, and you know, and I'm glad I didn't, because I think in the end that's still the monologue that resonates the most for me. And it's fun. It's a fun monologue.
Yeah. I suppose then, well, I mean, we was in the room last night for the first read. How does it, we'll stay with you for a second, Jean. How did it feel listening to your words again in this format that we're in now?
It was great. It was lovely because it was, these were actors that I have actually all worked with before at various points of time in my career, you know, being a very young, inexperienced playwright, you know, over 20 years ago, to people that I've just, you know, developed new work with just earlier this year, you know, and of course to Pei Tin, who's been a partner in crime for the last few years. So it was really nice it was kind of a reunion, you know, because there was an actor from the first staging and one from the second staging, and it was just very nice to see all these voices come together and to have them I guess bring to life not just the words but also the relationships in the play, because this is really a play that's about relationships. So I think when that spark happens, when people start to interact, you know, and start to argue or start to discuss things, you know, and even if they are not physically together, you know, you still get that sense of relationship and that's really a connection, which is really, really lovely.
Yeah, it's great that somehow this format is still allowing for that. Yeah, Peyton, what about you? What was your feelings in the room last night?
I thought that we were so happy to see one another again, and I think one of the cast members was telling me, "What? We're having rehearsals. I've never heard this word in such a long while," and I also we were all feeling so blessed to be able to come together in what is known as a rehearsal format. And I felt like we were just very desperate to connect with each other using the camera, like just try and reach out to one another across the screen. And there was a sense of like cheekiness and play, because everyone was really missing that in being together in the rehearsal room. So a lot of them were very curious. They were trying to see how they could, like play with camera angles and, do things like shaking the camera like this. And we were trying to do a bit of fight scene choreography using that medium. So it's also new things that we were very excited to try with, despite being limited.
And absolutely right. There's the opportunity to, we were just talking about, it's a rehearsed read, but there's an opportunity. We're only working for a short space of time, but there's an opportunity to still play. And actually, there's something really lovely about being in that room and that creative process. And even my technicians at SRT who weren't involved initially in the first read, but are now involved in this one, they were like, it's so nice to be in the rehearsal room. There was some sense of normal, is kind of the description that they gave, which I think is lovely. Back in the room, hearing them from the writer, the director, the dialogue from the actors, and obviously the technicians being around us still as well, which was great.
Can I just divulge a little bit of the process working with our sound designer as well?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think I've been sung to by a sound designer. Like, because when his video was down, so all I could hear was his voice communicating with me about sound cues and all that. And then he was asking me, okay, what's your inspiration for this? How would it sound like? And then we started singing to one another. Yeah, so, and then Paul, you were saying like, what, you got yuck to sing? So I suppose usually these people would, they are deemed to be backstage people, and then they don't, they're not comfortable with like expressing themselves like this. But because of the way we had to work in this time, it's a strange time, but I felt like I got closer with the backstage crew.
Yeah, I think it's a very different way of working, and I think somehow, I think maybe people have the perception that it's really about, we're all removed from each other. It's the kind of negative connotation, but actually, for some people, we're actually closer and more intimate than usual. And I think, Yat is a fantastic. I think he loves sound. That's his thing. And so I think for him to have that moment with you that probably doesn't get normally to sit, just and have that one-on-one time in such a more intimate space. And so I'm really glad that he had that experience with you, actually. I think it's fascinating. I have just a couple of questions to wrap us up. And Jean, this is a big one, but I know that the Boom is on the syllabus. Students do study this. And I just thought it'd be nice just to have, I wonder if there's a top tip or something that you would share with us that if students are watching this interview, they might go, okay, I'm gonna go away and look at that a little bit closer. Is there something you would pinpoint?
No, I mean, it's been really lovely to have it on the syllabus and to have, young people studying it, and they come up with the best questions, like, and the silliest questions, but also the best questions. Yeah. But every now and then they will squeeze in, something that's clearly from their assignment that they're trying to get me to answer for them. So usually I tell them it's all in there. It's kind of up to you to interpret. But I think what's been really nice is just to see them reacting to the play and to the familiarity of the situations and the characters and the language. And I mean, some of the nicest comments I've had about Boom from students is, it made me want to go and, treat my parents a little bit better, be a bit nicer to my parents. And I think, yes, the big, whether it's symbols or themes and all that, they can take their time and study that. But I think if it can affect their relationship with their families, if it can make them look at their grandparents and say, okay, maybe I should talk to my grandma a bit more, learn a bit of dialect from her, or just spend some time with my dad or whatever. I think that's actually the most important thing. So that's what I've really enjoyed, I think, in interacting with students about it. Maybe one tip would be As a play, go read it aloud with friends, rather than just read it on the page. I think it's very important to read it aloud, especially because Boom is the first play I deliberately wrote in Singlish. And so to be honest, it looks terrible on paper. You can't really, and if you don't understand Singlish, you have to hear it to know how it works, to hear the musicality of how we speak,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that mix of languages, kind of the code switching that we use. So I think it's very important actually for them to read it aloud, to experience it, and even try performing it.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. Thank you so much. There's loads we could take away from there. And I love listening to the play being read. I mean, Singlish has become something familiar to my ear. I mean, of course, I don't speak Singlish and I don't understand all of what's going on. But even when I hear it, there's something quite familiar and comforting about being here in Singapore and hearing it actually. So we'll finish up then. No pressure, Beijing, but what can our audiences expect from Boom when we perform via Zoom?
I think I always joke with the cast about how this is a hybrid version. It's Zoom Boom. So it's still a new medium that we are like constantly experimenting with in order for our theatre community to still connect with one another and also eventually to connect with our audiences across the screens. So we are quite excited about this new hybrid, but some of us, being purists sometimes, like we are still trying to retain some elements of theatricality in this theatre as an art form in a digital medium. So we wanted to retain the physical work that actors could share with each other, maybe some form of puppetry, not very advanced types, but we thought, hey, let's still work with puppetry and a bit of mask work so that we can bring out some of the surreal aspects of Jean's Boom. Because in it, there was some really, you can actually be in different spaces with the characters in their own monologues. Could be in heaven, you could be in hell, literally, right? Like, or in a tomb. So we really had a lot of fun jamming with handmade, actually made by you, Paul. Yeah. Like handmade masks and not to give a lot of things away, but yeah, we do have certain elements like that.
Yeah.
And something new would be sound design, even like we're bringing in some sounds. And I think last but not least would be the very relatable characters brought to life by our incredibly talented cast. And they actually are theater makers who span across different generations. And that's why, Jean, when you saw them, you're like, oh, these are people that I've come across throughout my different plays and different points of my career. And it's the same for me too. Yeah, some have been my teachers, turned friends, some we've worked with during the dramatized read of Boom as well, from different plays really. So I think we're all just waiting to bring all these characters alive and bring Boom to our audiences and relive Jean's wordsmith magic together.
I can't wait. We are in rehearsals right now, and we will see you all there. Of course, all you people watching this online now, you'll all be there on the 5th of June at 8 p.m. It will be on SRT Singapore Repertory Theatre Facebook page. So check out the links, Google us, you'll see us on our website and all the details. So thank you to Jean. It's been a pleasure to chat to you. Thank you, Peichin.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll see you all on the 5th of June.
Looking forward.